There is a forgotten food that once traveled with pharaohs into the afterlife. Not a jewel, not a spice. A small underground tuber, so rich in energy that people were harvesting it thousands of years before wheat fields covered the Nile. For centuries, it helped feed civilizations through dry seasons, hunger, and uncertainty. Yet today, many agricultural offices describe the same plant as a dangerous weed. Companies sell chemicals designed to wipe it out. Bulletins warn farmers about it. Entire control programs are built around stopping it from spreading. But here is the strange part. This plant can grow where common crops struggle. It stores food beneath the soil, survives harsh conditions, and does not need expensive fertilizer or pesticides to become useful. That is why its story matters. This is not just a weed. This is a buried survival food the modern food system would rather you never remember. Welcome to Botanical Vault. More than a century ago, archaeologists working in ancient Egyptian burial sites began finding something that looked ordinary at first. Small dried tubers, carefully placed near the dead. At first glance, they did not look like treasure. They were not golden objects, royal seals, or carved statues. But to the people who buried them, these little tubers clearly had value. They were selected, prepared, dried, and placed inside tombs with intention. Later studies found the same kind of tubers in connection with mummified remains. In some cases, they appeared to have been eaten before death. In others, they were placed nearby as food for the journey beyond this life. That tells us something important. This plant was not treated like a random wild snack. It had meaning, it had nutrition, and it had a place in one of the most advanced food cultures of the ancient world. At Wadi Kubania, north of Aswan, researchers found evidence of wild plant roots dating back to around 16,000 BCE. That is long before organized farming became the foundation of civilization. It means people were already seeking out this kind of food during the last ice age, when survival depended on knowing exactly which plants could be trusted. By around 5000 BCE, this tuber had become one of Egypt's early cultivated foods, standing beside emmer wheat and barley as part of the ancient diet. It was not just an emergency food. It was part of daily life, ritual life, and food security. One of the clearest images comes from the tomb of Rekhmire, a powerful official who served under Pharaoh Thutmose III. The wall paintings show workers preparing these tubers with care. They are measured, pounded with long pestles, mixed with honey, and shaped into tall cones. These were not ordinary cakes. They were offerings, sacred foods prepared for ceremonies and feasts linked to religious life and royal authority. The Egyptians called the tubers Hab el-Aziz. The Greeks knew them too. Ancient writers described ways of preparing them, including boiling them in beer. The Romans traded them. Across thousands of years, this plant moved from wild harvest to cultivated food, from survival ration to sacred offering. Today we know it as chufa, or Cyperus esculentus. In Spain, it is still called chufa. In parts of Africa, it is known by other names, including atadwe. In English markets, it is often sold as tiger nut because of its striped skin. But the name is misleading. Tiger nuts are not nuts at all. They are small underground tubers, natural energy stores produced beneath the soil. And that detail changes everything. Chufa belongs to the sedge family, the same broad plant family that gave the ancient world papyrus. It is not dramatic above the ground. The plant has narrow leaves and triangular stems, and to most people it looks like an ordinary patch of grass. But the real food is hidden underneath. Beneath the soil, chufa forms a network of small tubers. A single plant can produce dozens of them, each one packed with stored energy. These tubers are usually about the size of a chickpea, with a slightly wrinkled skin and a naturally sweet, nutty flavor. Many people describe the taste as something between almond, coconut, and a mild root vegetable. That is why ancient people could use it in so many ways. It could be eaten raw after soaking, roasted over fire, boiled, ground into paste, mixed with honey, or turned into a drink. In Egypt, it appeared in both food and medicine. Ancient medical texts mention preparations using chufa in treatments, household fumigations, and mixtures meant to improve smell and cleanliness. The plant did not remain in Egypt. Over time, traders and migrating cultures carried it across North Africa, into Sicily, and eventually into Spain. In Valencia, chufa became the base of horchata de chufa, a cold, sweet, milky drink that has been part of local food culture for centuries. But the most powerful feature of chufa is not its flavor. It is storage. The tubers can be dried with nothing more than air. Once dry, they can last for years without refrigeration, without preservatives, and without expensive equipment. Soak them again, and they soften back into food. For ancient people, that was not convenience, that was survival. Now look at what is inside these small tubers, because this is where the story becomes even more uncomfortable. Chufa is not just a strange ancient food. It is dense, practical nutrition. It contains plant protein, including the essential amino acids the body must get from food. It also contains healthy fats, especially unsaturated fats such as oleic acid, the same type of fat associated with olive oil. That means chufa was never only a source of calories. It gave people long-lasting energy, useful fats, minerals, and fiber in one small underground package. The carbohydrate in chufa is especially interesting. A large part of it behaves more slowly in the body than ordinary refined starch. It includes resistant starch, a type of carbohydrate that can feed beneficial bacteria in the gut instead of being broken down too quickly. That is one reason chufa can feel filling without creating the same sharp rise and crash people often get from more processed foods. It is also rich in fiber. For ancient communities, that mattered. Fiber supports digestion, slows the release of energy, and helps make a small amount of food feel more satisfying. Long before modern nutrition labels existed, people understood this through experience. Foods that kept them full, strong, and stable were remembered. Foods that failed them disappeared. Chufa also brings important minerals, including magnesium, potassium, iron, and calcium. It is naturally free from gluten and dairy, which makes it useful today for people who cannot tolerate many common modern ingredients. It can be ground into flour, blended into a milk-like drink, roasted as a snack, or eaten after soaking. So the question becomes obvious. If this plant has fed humans for thousands of years, if it stores without refrigeration, if it grows in difficult places, and if it offers this much nutrition, why is it not treated like a major food crop today? Why do modern farms cover millions of acres with crops that often need heavy irrigation, fertilizer, pesticides, machinery, storage systems, and global supply chains, while a plant like chufa is pushed into the category of weed? The answer is not simply about nutrition, it is about control. Chufa does not fit neatly into the business model of industrial agriculture. It spreads underground. It comes back after disturbance. It can be replanted from its own tubers. It does not need a farmer to buy a new seed package every season, and that independence is exactly what makes it threatening. Once chufa appears in a field, industrial agriculture sees a problem it cannot easily solve. The wild form is often known as yellow nutsedge. In many agricultural systems, it is listed as one of the most difficult weeds to control. The reason is hidden underground. Even if the leaves are cut, pulled, sprayed, or burned back, the tubers can remain alive in the soil. One plant can produce dozens of new tubers. Those tubers can wait underground and return later, sometimes after the farmer thinks the problem is gone. That same ability made chufa valuable to ancient people. It could survive, it could regenerate, it could keep producing food after drought, disturbance, and neglect. But in a modern monoculture field, that resilience becomes unacceptable. Industrial farming is built on control. One crop, one harvest schedule, one seed source, one chemical plan. Anything that grows outside that system is treated as an enemy, even if it is edible, nutritious, and historically important. So the war on chufa became chemical. Farmers are advised to use herbicides such as glyphosate, halosulfuron, sulfentrazone, and bentazone. Research often admits that one treatment is not enough. Repeated applications may be needed over multiple seasons just to reduce the plant population. Think about what that means. A plant once valued as food for the living and the dead is now studied mainly as something to poison. The real danger is not that chufa grows too well. The real danger is what it reveals. Modern staple crops often depend on irrigation, fertilizer, pesticides, expensive machinery, storage networks, and fragile global markets. Chufa exposes a different possibility, a crop that can spread itself, store itself, and feed people without asking permission from the supply chain. You cannot easily patent an ancient food. You cannot sell fertilizer to a plant that thrives in poor conditions. You cannot create dependency when people can save tubers and replant them again. So the language changed. Food became weed. Resilience became invasion. Abundance became a problem. But the story did not end with the chemical labels. In Valencia, Spain, chufa is still protected through food tradition. For centuries, local farmers have grown it for horchata de chufa, a cold, sweet drink that carries the memory of this plant into the modern world. In parts of West Africa, people still cultivate and sell tiger nuts in markets, not as a weed, but as food. The knowledge survived because ordinary people kept using it. It survived empire. It survived colonialism. It survived the rise of industrial farming. And now, slowly, it is returning under a new name. Health food stores sell tiger nuts as a fiber-rich snack. Gluten-free bakers test chufa flour. People blend it into dairy-free milk. Researchers study its oil and its potential as a resilient crop. But notice the contradiction. The same plant praised in one aisle of a health store is still treated as an enemy in many fields. One system sells it as a premium superfood. Another system teaches farmers how to kill it. That tells you the real issue was never whether chufa had value. The issue was who controlled that value. A plant that grows too easily is difficult to turn into dependency. A food that stores without refrigeration threatens systems built on constant buying. A crop that can be replanted from its own tubers does not need permission from seed companies. So they called it a weed. But names do not erase history. 16,000 years of human use cannot be undone by a technical bulletin. The pharaohs knew this plant. Ancient farmers knew it. Families in Spain and Africa still know it. And now you know it too. Chufa is not just a forgotten tuber. It is a reminder that some of the most powerful foods were never lost. They were only renamed, dismissed, and buried. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Botanical Vault and hit the bell. The next forgotten food is waiting underground.